Here are 10 questions that I feel an atheist needs to answer if they're going to be consistent in what they believe. If you don't have good answers to these questions, perhaps your belief as an atheist is based on blind faith.
Okay, so before you even start asking the questions, you make one of the worst errors you can make when talking about atheism, and this error makes a large impact on how you approach any evidence you're provided with when the answers roll in. The claim that atheism requires as much faith as a religion is asinine. If you claim this, you simply do not understand what faith really is. The Oxford Dictionary definition of faith is as follows: a strong belief in the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual conviction rather than proof. This is completely contradictory to the foundations of science. Science makes an observation, creates a hypothesis on this observation, tests are done in this hypothesis, and thus evidence is produced. When sufficient evidence is produced, then we have a theory. If new evidence arises, then the theory can change and adapt to this newfound evidence provided the new evidence is sufficient enough. The difference then is science adjusts its views based on what's observed. Faith is the denial of observation so that belief can be preserved.
Question number 1. If there is no God, why is there anything at all?
Let's have a closer look at how this question is structured. It asks, if there is no God, then why is there anything at all? This question is structured in a very biased way. This is shown in the first half. If there is no God. So to even answer it, we must assume that God does exist, and only pretend that he doesn't to come up with alternative reasons of existence. Now, as you can see, the second half of the question reads as, then why is there anything at all? This continues the idea of God existing, and that he is the reason behind all of existence and creation. It makes it seem illogical and quite frankly stupid to even think of an alternative reason, hence making this question biased. Also, it requires us to give evidence that God doesn't exist, and also to give evidence of why everything does exist. Yet, he is the one which is making the claim. He is the one who has the apparent answers and reasons of existence, so the burden of proof is in his hands, and not ours.
This question falls victim to the logical fallacy of begging the question. In order to answer this question as it is worded, then you must agree that there is purpose to everything in so-called creation. But this is putting purpose where purpose is not needed. We have evidence of where the universe came from, but trying then to place a purpose on it is unnecessary.
This is another angle on where did the universe come from without a creator. If you want to say, well, the Big Bang, great. I go for Big Bang. But God lit the fuse. God set it all in motion.
The Big Bang Theory is the description of how the universe came into existence, and we accept that this theory may then raise new questions, such as, what caused the Big Bang then? And I'll talk about the Big Bang having a cause later. It is okay for now to say that we do not know what caused the Big Bang, but we're working on it. It is not okay to employ the idea of a creator God at this point, because this doesn't actually answer the question, as it is not supported by any evidence. If we simply say, God lit the fuse to the Big Bang, then we must explain God, and this is too difficult because God is such a complex being to be able to deal with this, so we do not use this God of the gaps to answer questions science does not yet have the answer to.
Here is a good example of biblical criticism. This is how religious people try to twist and apply their religious faith on theories of science, the theory of the Big Bang being a common one that they use. The Bible clearly states, in Genesis chapter 1, that God created the world in 6 days, taking the Sabbath day as a day of rest. Yet obviously the Big Bang didn't create the world in 6 days. The more that religions try to adapt their belief upon science, the more they conflict with their respected religious doctrine.
Where did your Big Bang come from? Has anything ever been observed to happen without a cause? Okay.
Well, just because what you observe in the universe happens to have a cause, this does not mean the universe itself required a cause. This argument falls victim to the fallacy of composition. Do not assert that anything that we observe inside the universe has a cause, therefore the universe must have needed a cause. Otherwise you risk falling victim to the fallacy of composition.
Second question. Where is the evidence that life could have begun without intelligent interference?
Again, this argument is committing the logical fallacy of begging the question, and in fact, this is actually the wrong question to ask. What would be the right question to ask here is, where is the evidence that life can begin with intelligent interference? Because the first question that he asks suggests that burden of proof is on the side of the arguer that is not making the claim. The person of the claim must provide sufficient evidence, and we do not have that evidence to support the claim that life can begin with intelligent interference, because this is the claim being made at hand.
The only evidence for creationism is in the Bible. The Bible claims God created everything, so now we ask, what is the evidence for God? Again, the Bible. This is a fallacy of circular reasoning. So to breach upon this fallacy even more, we ask, what makes the Bible true? And, ironically enough, the answer is, the Bible is right because God said so. Is it just me? Or can anyone else see a pattern emerging here?
We can recognize creation because we know that, for example, the painting needed a painter, and we can track down this painter. But when claiming that anything natural, for example a tree or a seed, has a creator, it would be empirically or logically impossible to try and track down any form of a natural creator.
Question 3. How can evolution explain features of irreducible complexity apart from intelligent intervention? And what I'm talking about is features that we see in creatures today, such as wings. Wings on birds. Birds supposedly evolved from reptiles, and those wings before this evolution were legs, forelimbs, arms, whatever you might want to call that. And you need to be able to say and demonstrate that each stage that was necessary in their steps of evolving these wings was a benefit to that creature all along the way. In other words, this creature whose legs began to be wings would have become less worthwhile as legs. How is he more survivable than the creature who has experienced no change and has perfectly good legs? So, let's see that.
Irreducible complexity is a non-scientific argument by proponents of intelligent design that certain biological systems are too complex to evolve from simpler or less complete predecessors. This is the most common irreducible complexity argument. The bacterial flagellum are irreducibly complex. Since non-functional intermediates cannot be preserved by natural selection, these systems can only be explained by intelligent design. This isn't true. This is an example of argument from incredulity, because irreducible complexity can evolve naturally. Many of the proteins in the bacterial flagellum are similar to each other or to the proteins or other functions. Their origins can easily be explained by a series of gene duplication events followed by modification and or cooperation, proceeding gradually through intermediate systems different from and simpler than the final flagellum.
Intelligent intervention is not needed for an animal to become more complex. This can be seen in the life of a caterpillar. It cocoons itself and then develops into a butterfly, similar to his analogy of reptiles growing wings. There are many benefits for this caterpillar becoming a butterfly. These benefits include being able to escape predators easier, having a wider range for feeding, and even the patterns on their wings being able to attract mates to breed. One could claim this is an example of evolution by natural selection.
Question 4. How can the evolutionary model be true, since the fossil record clearly shows most major groups emerging at the same time? I'd like you to Google Cambrian explosion and see what I'm talking about there. Stephen Jay Gould, who was the foremost proponent of evolution for years and years, now deceased, said that the dirty little secret of evolution was that the fossil record does not show gradual change. He's right, it doesn't. And yet we have been told since Darwin that gradual change is what happened. Very small steps, they're not in the fossil record.
This is just scientifically wrong. There are tons of fossil record evidence that point to the gradual change which evolution by natural selection states. But regardless of this, if there if there were no fossil records, it wouldn't matter, because we have lots of other ways of providing evidence for evolution by natural selection. For example, we can observe the process of evolution happening right now, regardless of whether or not we have fossil records. It is important to focus on the evidence. It is not important to focus on the evidence we don't have, rather than focusing on the evidence or the observations we have made.
The Cambrian explosion didn't happen all of a sudden. It didn't even last a short amount of time. It actually lasted for around 40 million years. The Cambrian explosion is a term given to the Cambrian time period, which was around 540 million years ago. It does not in any way disprove or contradict evolution. The term explosion was given because of this 40 million year time period, the first single and multicellular life began to emerge. The traditional view of evolution is that it takes a very long time for animals to evolve, and when they do, it is only by a small amount. Well, this traditional view has been challenged. The idea to evolve is to master a form which is the best for your environment. So, if the environment remains the same, then evolution is not needed, or happens incredibly slowly. But the fossil records now suggest that evolution can happen by jumps. If the environment changes rapidly, evolution is needed to also change rapidly. But anyway, getting back to the point of the Cambrian explosion, there are many reasons to which this may have happened. From the Earth becoming more oxygenated, making life more abundant, to even the idea of an arms race between predators and prey. As the predators become more evolutionarily adapt to hunt their prey, the prey in turn needs to evolve to counter the attack, and this chain continues, creating new species and versions of animals. Also, I believe he was requesting to see some evidence of gradual change of a species of animals over millions of years. Well, here, now on the screen, are two pictures. The first here is showing the evolutionary changes of a horse. And now this one is the skeletons of 4 of the 5 evolutionary changes. I hope this provides enough evidence.